let it be. I can control anything if I can just think carefully. I control my destiny. Deep up in my mind I manifest it. Every morning I wake up obsessed, and everything I do the best. And deep within my mind, you know I'll always manifest it.
Yeah, you got to.
I'm going to need a straitjacket by the time we're done with this if he keeps letting that roll.
Yeah, Jason's going to have to excuse himself. So, but anyhow, well, we are excited to be jumping back on. If you guys have been playing along with us at all, we've been putting out quite a few episodes recently talking about mountain fitness. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some mountain fitness with our partners, our friends, and partners in crime. Western HuntFest, we have Jeff on today, and Guy, who's also with Western Contours, as well as now an official partner in the Western HuntFest events that we are so pumped to be part of. And so first and foremost, to do some quick hellos and how we doing. So guys, how are you today?
Excellent, brother. Thanks for having us on.
Doing good. I got it.
Doing better now.
So always good to catch up with you guys. We do a lot of texting. We do a lot of social media kind of back and forth and some emailing. And there's a lot going on behind the scenes. We are super pumped about the fact that, 2 years ago, we kind of we're fortunate enough to meet both you, Jeff and E. And then at the first Western HuntFest that we had in Bailey, met Guy and last year kind of bumped up and went up to having 2 events, and now we're here in year 3 and we're up to 5. So things are really trending in the right direction. We're excited about it. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what is to come. And so there's a lot to cover. There's a lot of new stuff. I know you guys have been really busting it, trying to just expand and make this a family event, make this something that is just completely unique. If you guys have been to Total Archery Challenge or Mountain Archery Fest or anything like that, I mean, Western HuntFest is a one of one in my mind. So let's start with that. I don't know which one of you guys wants to kick it off, but tell us a little bit about, maybe some of the stuff we can look forward to this year. And then we're going to talk about, obviously, our portion of it, which is the Packout Challenge.
Go ahead, Geoff.
So yeah, Western HuntFest. We're on year 3. We're super excited. Like Joel said, we went from 2 events last year to 5 this year, so there's going to be a big change. The basic overview of the Western HuntFest is it's a 3D archery tournament with hunt-specific tasks at each shot. It's an elk calling contest where we use like a real live tree for people to rake on, and we judge on more than just the actual sounds. We judge on the knowledge of the sounds. And then we added a sprint challenge, and I'll let Guy touch on the sprint challenge. And then, of course, the pack-out challenge, everybody's favorite. But yeah, that's the basic competition portion of it. This year we'll be leaning heavily on the kids portion. We'll have a lot of kids activities. We'll have every location is going to be a little bit different, but we're going to have like a Nerf kid range and maybe just a basic kid range where they can get some basic archery instructions, basic elk calling instructions, and then yeah,
it's awesome. So, Guy, tell us about this sprint challenge, because this is a new piece. I think we kind of had a tiebreaker last year at Bailey, and I think that was where this thing kind of grew some legs. So talk about this, because I think everybody was pretty excited about that. It's a little bit different than the Packout Challenge, but it's still something that I think is going to be exciting. It's going to be pretty fun to watch and see people kind of get after. Talk about that.
Yeah, so there's been dominance in the previous facets, right? You got your archery competition has been dominated by a certain individual pretty much, and then same with the Packout Challenge when you talk about the solo event. So really what we wanted to do was kind of take that archery aspect of it, that physicality aspect of it, that strength endurance thing, and combine something to kind of level the playing field, right? To see if that dominant archery, guy could go and throw a pack on and shoot, and then vice versa. So you're basically looking at a 100-yard course, we'll say, and at the 50-yard mark, you're going to have a 50-yard target. So you're going to sprint to your target and let an arrow fly. Then we're going to have a sandbag. Weight has yet to be determined, and you're going to have to drag or carry that sandbag, and then sprint back to the target, shoot, and then you're going to have your 100-yard sprint, go back, shoot your last one. So you're going to go sprint to the start line, all the way back to the sandbag, grab the sandbag, come back to the target, and then let your final arrow go. So if you shoot, or if your total time, call it, 3 minutes, and you shoot a 10 or a 12 ring, we're going to subtract time from your total. If
We're
you
dumping
shoot
cash.
an 8 or a 5, Jeff fell off. Yeah.
If I hope he'll jump back
I'm gonna
up.
just keep going. If you shoot an 8 or 5, then we'll add to your total time. So you can have a 3-minute time and, be down in the, 2.5, 240. If you don't do very well on your shooting with the physical element to it, then you can be looking at a 320, a 330 total score. And it was really just to level the playing field and add something. It's going to be fun as heck to watch that, right? But to bring both the elements together in something that we could manage on top of everything else that we're managing out there for the weekend. And we're really hoping to see how those guys bring both aspects together. You're shooting under duress with the stress of the running and the competition aspect of it, right? Carrying the bag or dragging the bag. So we really wanted to just mix it up a little bit in that respect. So it's going to be a cool competition. And really it's going to help with the point accumulation and level that playing field. So one of the changes that we made is it's point accumulation over the event. So previously you had your archery winner, you had your packout challenge winner, you had your elk calling comp winner. You'll still have those winners. You'll still have that podium. But the prize package, we'll say, is going to be awarded to the most complete man or woman at the events. So you'll have
a grand champion.
The ultimate predator is what we're aiming for, right? So Bailey this year will be an invite event for the folks that podium at the
so
other four
I think to give people a little bit of a better overview of like how all 5 events, even though they are kind of independent of each other, we're going to look at the winners from each one of those areas at each one of those events. And the final event in Bailey is essentially going to be like a grand champion. So we're hopeful that all of the winners, or as many of the winners as possible from each individual event, will make it to Bailey. And we're going to kind of have a little, king of the castle type situation where we still have a lot of other folks there that can enter and that type of stuff, I'm assuming, right? But those people that are the champions from all the other 4 events are going to come together, and we're going to try and crown someone to be like the overall from the entire event series, which I think is just going to be really cool. I think it ups the game. I know when we talked in the live, we talked a little bit about like, well, which one's going to be the toughest, right? Because the terrain's going to be different at each of them. The targets are going to be different. The distances will be different. There's a whole lot of factors, and it'll be really interesting to see kind of how some of that plays out. And, the sprint challenge is going to be a really cool addition to that. Jeff mentioned especially the addition of adding the kids. What we haven't talked about, the addition also of like trying to grow. Last year, we finally did have some women in the packout challenge, which is super exciting. And we want to try and see that aspect of it grow as well, where the men's as well as the team divisions, and we've talked about having even a mixed division where they're going to pack out the equivalent of a quartered out bull elk with the head and antlers. The women are going to pack out what would be similar to that with a mule deer. And so it's going to be pretty cool to see kind of how those numbers continue to grow. And we're trying to figure out, like, how do we make these things so that I don't think you can standardize them, but the skills are going to be the skills, right? Which is like, you either are going to be ready to shoot any target. I mean, they're not, it's not like you're going to go to one event and there's, you know, the targets are all going to be 80 plus yards and they're only going to be 40 at the other event. There's going to be a lot of, you know, similar variation with some of those things. And the packout challenge, we've talked a lot about how do we try and make that a little bit more feasible, where we want as many people to get through that as possible. We want to challenge as many people.
Not having 3 mile courses is a good way to start.
Yeah. So we talked about that, which is at Whittington will be a little bit more condensed this year. And some of that is just due to logistics. We want to get more people through the packout challenge, and we want it to be something that seems attainable. You know, I think last year in Bailey, for sure, a lot of folks saw what the course was and said, oh man, I could give that a whirl. And I think we actually gained probably 10 or more people that did it on the spot, because they're like, man, I want to try that. I actually want to see if I can do it.
A half mile doesn't sound as bad as 2 miles.
Yeah.
Or even a mile.
I really think that's kind of what Jeff Ephron and I have talked about is really limiting that course to that half mile, 3/4 mile distance. And that would be a single loop, right? So folks are clear on that. That's a single loop. So you're looking at a mile to a mile and a half for the total. And then, you know, you brought up the women's event. We want to be clear, like, we want women at these events, right? I mean, we want families at these events. So we're really, you know, the women have their own division. And that's something that we need to consider too, is right, what's the women's distance? And I think, you know, you bringing that up just makes me think on the fly that maybe it's the women's that's the half mile and the men's is the 3/4 mile, and we just have a cutoff for them. And then the more requests we get, because we've seen it, right? We had it last year, and the folks that did Dan's camp came in and killed the that couples. So we're really looking at building a couples division if we get that. And when we talked about it, I believe that was Friday. We talked about, you know, mocking up a cow elk in that one. So, you know, if it's husband and wife or whatever the partner situation is there, we could accommodate that with a little bit lighter load. So,
no, I think it's going to be awesome. The more ways with which we can get people excited about doing it, I think the better off that it definitely is. And we continue to try and figure out, how do we keep providing value? I know, Guy, you asked us when we had a kind of a conference call a while back, it's like, well, what are you guys doing to bring value to that packout challenge? And I think that's a huge part of what not only the challenge is about, but then giving people something more than just like, well, here's something that was really hard and I completed the task. Okay, good. Nice job. Pat you on the back and send you on your way. Is we're trying to provide people with a little bit more to chew on, which is, hey, this year our goal is that if you finish the packout challenge, is we want to have something ready for you in terms of metrics that we're going to hand to you, print off for you actually on site, and say, if you did this and these were your numbers and this was the loads you took and this was the time and so on and so forth, we're trying to gather as much of that and say, now that you know this, here's what you should work on. Here's what these numbers actually mean. And these are things that you can try to take home and actually improve upon going forward, because a lot of the packout itself is just giving you an idea of like, where do you stand right now based on what your current training looks like, and how are you going to continue trying to improve as you get closer to September and beyond, because that's a huge part of the game. Is like, yeah, you can go out and tromp around the woods forever, but how prepared are you if you actually get the job done, and are you physically in good enough position to be able to complete the transaction, which is getting out of there. So
sure.
I mean, that's huge for us, right? Is the education piece, right? And when Jeff and I had talked, I don't know, a year ago, it was like, man, we want this to be educational. We want people to come in and gain knowledge And I think we have the perfect, team with you guys in that realm, right? So it's like you can't miss it. The seminars, I mean, if you look at who we have doing seminars for calling and the other seminars that we're trying to add, it's about education. Even when you're on the 3D course, right? There's, like Jeff said, there's hunt scenarios that are built into this. And the reason that they're there is, to offer some challenge, but to also offer education in terms of where you stand in every facet of hunting, right? This is not, a 3D shoot. This is a hunting event, right? This is going to test every facet of your skill set. So I think, and you guys, you guys do it on a daily basis, right? We couldn't have a better partner in terms of turning that stuff around and leading those attendees or participants, to that physical part of season. So glad to have you guys on board with it. I mean, it's huge what that can offer someone. And most folks, quite honestly, don't really know until they shoot that animal if they're prepared or not. You know what I mean? And the packouts always suck, but you don't really know where you stand in it. So to be able to offer just a little bit of insight is huge for us.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part is we've seen that now in 2 seasons, right? Which is people that have come and they're like, I've never actually packed an animal out. I want to see what it's like, right? And I think that's
the try before you buy model.
Right.
For sure. But we don't want people to be discouraged as well. You know what I mean?
No.
So you're kind of
I think like what you guys are touching on here is that idea of I don't want to be discouraged, but I also need to know what my thresholds are. Like I need to know what it feels like to have X amount of weight on my back. I need to know what it feels like to carry X amount of weight over a certain distance. Like even if you only completed 1 lap of the pack out and you tapped out after that, that knowledge that you're going to gain in that 1 lap, having never done it before, is going to be immensely valuable if you're to put an animal down in the woods.
For sure.
Right. So, because you'll harken back to that idea of, I did this pack out where I took X amount of weight and it killed me. So in order to pack this one out, I'm going to take less weight, even if it means making more trips. And how many times have we seen, the big burly, macho guy show up and go, I'm going to do this in 2 laps. And halfway through the first lap, he's dropping bags and sucking wind and not able to complete it.
So we've had a couple technical difficulties here. You've got feeds coming from all over the place. You got to love the internet and everything else that goes along with it sometimes.
We should just do this in person.
Trying to get all the technology to operate properly. But we were just starting to get into talking a little bit about the kids side of things. And I know, as Guy was just talking about, Jeff, you've done a ton of work on trying to get that aspect of it going. We've talked a little bit about some of the things that are going to be included in that, but tell us a little bit more about what is kind of to look forward to with regards to the kids stuff.
Yeah. So as far as the kids stuff, there's going to be a lot of education. So we're really going to try to involve the whole family in the process. So like even the non-hunters, and the kids, we want to include some fun things. Like I'm going to do a mini calling seminar for the kids, just teaching them basic sounds and just letting them have fun with the tubes and the calls and just really beginning to learn to love like the elk calling portion of it. And then as far as the shooting portion,
right,
we have a handful of ideas for the shooting portion. So at the Whittington Center, we'll have our Nerf bow range, where we're going to have some Nerf bows that the kids can shoot inflatable animals and just have fun and run a little wild as their parents are participating. And then we're working on getting like some kid-specific vendors just to keep the kids and the family entertained while, their loved ones are out participating.
Yeah,
but
that's awesome. I think that just everything behind that, which is thinking about the future of hunting, getting kids excited about it, the family aspect of it, where you're including everyone, right? Which is, we're seeing a huge sector in the hunting industry that's now female, right? And we know when we look at all the things going on within the hunting and outdoor space, as far as where we're seeing a lot of things coming down from, legislation and initiatives and all these things that people are doing to try and limit or do away with, right? Our availability and ability to get out and hunt and manage being a productive part of what conservation and all these other things that we as hunters know and care about, that involving the family, getting folks more excited about it, getting them out into doing some of these activities and getting them exposed to it is only just another positive correlator to what, these events are about, and how we're, everybody that's involved in this just has such a higher purpose than, hey, let's just go out and shoot our bows for the weekend, or let's just have a boys weekend and that type of thing, which you just see so much of. And that's all fine, good and well, right? But at the end of the day, it's creating a culture around what these events are about. And I think that's what, we've always been super excited about. I think when we had the very first event, that it was something that we noticed, right? There was a feel about the people that were there that you just got a sense around the type of people that were there and how excited they were about just the difference in that compared to some of your other traditional shoots and stuff like that. So I love that idea. And I love that you guys are chasing, finding just new and fresh avenues to make it more family friendly. So that's awesome.
Yeah. We love the other shoots, how people take their kids on the courses and do all that other stuff. But like, that's kind of a long day and it distracts the shooters. So we really wanted to keep the kids in the vendor area and just let them hang out and relax. So that was really important to us when we started this. Like, hey, let's have an area for the kids to just sit down and relax. And the last couple of years we did a little bit, but this year we're really going to ramp it up and just get creative with it.
Yeah, really it's kind of nice too, right? In our meetings, Jeff said, hey, not the entire family, there may be one hunter in the house, right? And it's so hard to explain, right? Because it almost feels like a selfish endeavor when you're going out into the field. So to add another day on top of it, or a weekend to pull that hunter out of the household, it was a big send. And it was, in that discussion, it was like, man, let's go full send on this. We got to do this. And, bringing the kids in and getting them excited. Sometimes as a parent, it's hard to do that, right? You don't want to push your passion on your children. But if they're able to come in and say, oh, there's other kids that are here doing this and it is enjoyable, and they don't feel that, dad at the range with them, shooting pressure and calling pressure, it's going to be really, really nice. And Jeff is second to none. And you guys have seen how good he is with the kids to bring these kids in and in the call comp, the kids call comp, I'm emceeing that thing. And Jeff is literally in their ear, instructing them on what call sounds like what. And every one of those kids, right? I mean, we had, I think, a 2-year-old. What was Chase's kid? 2 or 3. Yeah. And she's out there and he's just second to none when it comes to bringing the kids into it and getting them to understand what the call sounds like. So it was a no-brainer, to bring this full throttle into it. So I'm
and then you get all the adults. I think you get all the adults that are buying into it as well, right? They're the support structure when those kids are getting up on stage, because that's it's akin to public speaking. Like, if you asked me to get up on the stage to do a call, join the calling contest, I'd tell you go fly a kite. There's no freaking way, right? I mean, I'll go stand on a mound in front of 40,000 people because I'm confident in that ability. But you asked me to go blow through a bugle tube, like you've heard me in private, and you told me I suck. So there's no way I'm doing it. In front of people that I know. But, when you're a little kid and you don't know any better, you can be really shy. And then you get the adults that are cheering you on and, they're clapping their hands and they're encouraging you, and you get to be a little bit more comfortable in your abilities. And that might spur a passion or a love of trying to do it. Like, hey, I want to get better at that. Look how much everybody enjoyed listening to me.
For sure.
And they want to go do it again.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the buy-in that we're looking for, so that, when the event comes around next year, they go, Mommy, Daddy, when are we going to go blow through the bugle tube again? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Or when are we going to go to the range and shoot those Nerf guns? Like kids remember that stuff.
For
Like,
sure.
My kid's got the memory of an elephant. He remembers things like, they were yesterday. I don't remember what happened yesterday, but he reminds me. He's like, hey, certain things. Hey, when are we going to go do this again? I'm like, oh crap, I forgot I did take you to that. Like, yeah, we should go do that again. That was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those are memories that get locked away for a long time.
Yeah, I don't know how happy some of the parents will be, because the kids will get some calls and working out a deal with some externals for them to take with them, for just participating and really honing in on that. And then there'll be some that are super excited that they have a caller in the family now.
Right.
Yeah, they'll be
Jeff,
better.
Your house isn't loud enough. Wait till we put some bugle tubes in their hands.
Well, they got them already over there.
It's loud here.
Yeah,
My wife.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
I know. Well, you and me both. I'm like locked into the basement. I'm relegated to carrying mine in the truck all the time. I'm the guy that's driving down the road, in town, practicing and stuff like that. And people are at the stoplights looking at me, and they're like, "What in the hell?"
The best is when you've got a reed call in your mouth and you look straight at another driver with your window down and you blow a cow call, and and you're still smiling. You're still smiling at them, and they're looking around, going,
"What in the world
where did that come from?"
Yeah, it's awesome. They're like, "That's a weird looking bong, dude."
Yeah.
If you want to hear how good your bugle sounds,
you brought up.
Oh, sorry. Go under a bridge and hit a bugle.
Yeah.
All that reverb,
bro.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense.
It's like singing in the shower. So, you brought up the fact that, you don't want to get up on stage, and we're kind of forcing hands in that, right? With the new point system.
Right.
Where folks are like, oh man, I don't know. And Bailey last year had, a phenomenal, we had 21 or 22 callers at Bailey, which was really cool. Right. And you had guys that were, pretty novice, and then you had guys that were phenomenal callers. But going back to the education piece, look, get on stage, compete in that. There's no one there laughing at you, right?
No.
But you can go and say, hey, ask our judges, hey, how did I score? What did I sound good on? If you look at who our judges are, Jermaine Hodge, Joe Gillia, you're talking some of the best callers around. You're going to get some feedback from those guys and instruction that's going to make you better in September. Right. So it's like, get on that stage and compete, no matter where you think your skill set is at. So it's really, really cool, man. Again, going back to the educational piece on it, and really what we're striving to do. So,
I think that's such a huge part of
competing.
Yeah. And I think that the goal and hopefully what gets kind of accomplished through all that is that you start to create a level of comfort and camaraderie in the people that are there that are like,
100.
Man, like you should do this, right? Like if you don't think you're the best caller, this is a great place to do it, where you're going to get people that can help you. Even some of the guys and girls that are already good callers, right? It's like they can help you. And if you get around more of those people, I just don't see how it can be a bad situation, because as I say a lot of times, like we talk about this in training, it's like, I'd rather have you fail in training and have you, come short and not get things done while we're trying to improve and get better, right? Like that's what this environment is designed to be about, so that you can have people help you and you can have people give you like, here's what you should be focused on. Here's what you should be working on, right? And even in the archery portion of that, right? You guys talked about it. This isn't like, some of the other events where you're just going to walk up to a target, stand there, range it, shoot it, move on, right? Have a little fun, whatever. Like all that's good and well. And we have a great time doing that too. But how often are archers, us as bow hunters and things like that, shooters, are we really guilty of just standing flat-footed, shooting at a target, changing the distance, shoot at another target, change the distance, shoot another target, and they don't do the things like what you guys have created within the Western Hunt Fest, which is, hey, you might have to crawl up to a target to get a shot off. We know how often it is you may have to hold a shot, right? You may have to stand on uneven ground. Maybe you're going to have to draw and then quarter turn. And there's all sorts of different situations that you guys have created that most of us are really guilty of not doing when we practice, right? And this will be an eye-opener for some folks, because now it's like, hey, if that's a shot you have to take, guess what? You're going to need to
just envisioning the draw. You're going to draw down the line and then turn to face your target, like at the range. Like how well that would go off at a range.
That doesn't go good at No Limits.
No.
Might be difficult to pull that one off.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Exactly.
Or crawling next to all the guys on the range.
Yeah. Well, Jason and I have done that quite a few times, and people look at us where, like, we'll be like, all right, you're going to run out, run back, run out, run back. And we'll do, like, say, like a 100 yards of just a run and then shoot. And, like, one of us will take off and go running, and the other one's sitting there, like timing or whatever. And people are looking, it's like, what in the world are these two knuckleheads doing?
Try to elevate my heart rate.
And then try and shoot under pressure like that. You're like, shoot an arrow, do it again. Shoot an arrow, do it again, right? And it's like, it's hard to do in a lot of those settings. And that's what this whole event is about, is to actually encourage more of that stuff that will translate and potentially put you in better positions, or at least give you an eye opener to, like, man, I better stop shooting flat footed all the time, and I better start.
And it goes back to the try before you buy.
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
Like you're going to do these things before you ever have to deploy them in the field.
Yeah.
Right. If your first time you're deploying it is in the field, then you're never going to know what to expect.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
Whereas if you do it at an event like Western Hunt Fest, and say you mess up, then you learn from that mess up, so that when you're in the field and you draw and you go, oh, I remember when I did this at Hunt Fest and I missed, I've got to do this. Right. I've got to take a deep breath, or I've got to slow down, or I've got to check my feet, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Most
right.
Definitely.
I mean, even if you look at, drawing and letting down, drawing, anchoring, and getting, back on target and shooting, right? I mean, how many people have actually experienced that and understand what a nice, smooth letdown is, right? Don't drop everything way down here. Stay nice, compact, tight to that draw position. Stay inside your body.
Right.
So those elements are huge. Can we flip the script a little bit? I really want people to understand the preparation part from you guys in terms of the physical events of it, right? And I will say that before we get into that, the fit and function of whatever pack system you're using is going to make or break you on any pack out. And that was one of the things that was elevated in my mind last year, watching folks really, really struggle with proper fit and function of their packs. So, learn your packs. But what I would like you guys to talk about is how do people prepare for Western Hunt Fest? Like, what is the best way to go about it in terms of the pack out challenge and getting through that portion of the event?
So that's a great question, and we can get this covered in probably just under a couple hours. So buckle up.
Hold tight. Jeff, you've got time to go change the battery in your smoke detector.
Exactly. So no, but
dumb it
down, boys. Well, there's a lot of layers to it, right? And for me, the first one is just foundational. Number one is we have to develop what we call like zone 2 or low level aerobic base. That's such a huge portion of how our base level metabolic conditioning looks. And a lot of that is what we consider to be like our conversation level of aerobic training, right? Light bike rides. For some people, it may even be a brisk walk. It could be basically doing some incline walking on a treadmill and building up to where we started doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and kind of like working on expanding that window, right? The hard part is that we see a lot of stuff within, say, our CrossFit community, our hard charger folks that are just like, man, I'm going to crush it. I'm going to crush it every day. I'm just going to go harder. I'm going to do more. And they're missing out on what realistically becomes the most valuable tool within that component of getting in what most people call better shape, right? In this context, we're talking about in better shape for something like the pack out. Now, with that being said, is we're going to mix in some of those things, higher intensity work, right? For us, I love doing things like sled pushes, sled drags. If you don't have the ability to get up into altitude and in, you know, undulating country and stuff, if you don't live out here in Colorado or some of these other mountain states, then those are simple things that give us a little bit better of an idea of being in the same angles. For example, like we'll do a sled pull where you're essentially leaning forward, right? And it's simulating or creating a similar angle, what it would be like to be trekking uphill, right? So big fan of those types of things. And then we're going to build out some endurance muscularly, which comes from lunges, step ups. Yes, we can do squats and deadlifts and things like that, our traditional stuff, but I'm a much bigger fan of doing things single leg, because there's never really a time when you're in the backcountry where you're standing 2-footed and going up and down, up and down, up and down. You're always going to be going 1 foot after the other. And then we try to create variation through creating different angles, right? So we'll do things where we're going to have them, you know, with their foot a little bit downhill, their foot a little bit uphill. We're going to change lunges to being lateral and crossover and things like that are going to emulate what it's like to contour, what it's like to go uphill, what it's like to come downhill, right? And then gradually build up that endurance through using kettlebells, using dumbbells, using your standard stuff. We love sandbags and things like that. And as we mix those two together a little bit, the last component that's absolutely critical that you kind of touched on, which is getting your pack, you know, learning how to use it and get it fitted right and properly and all that stuff, is simply the ergonomics, which is we need to make sure that we've got good trunk qualities, good hip qualities, and those types of things that kind of become really the third part of that foundation, which is integrity. Because if we don't have good structural integrity through the trunk, through the hips, and even up into the shoulders, guess what? That load over time is going to break you down, right? And we always talk about it's not the load that breaks you down, it's how you carry it. And if you're got kind of what we call chinks in the armor, and any part of you kind of has, you know, a little bit of a back, a little bit of a hip, maybe I'm not strong enough through the trunk or whatever, that load over time is going to expose that, right? And so it's a huge part for us to really try and establish how critical that kind of, a lot of people just call it core training. I don't like that word because I think it's really misunderstood what core training looks like. But the core is essentially from my up here all the way down to essentially below the hip, right? And everything in there speaks to itself. There's 36 pairs of muscles that attach just to the pelvis alone. So there's a lot of harmony that's got to happen in terms of how things are stabilizing synergistically and how everything is utilized as we're ambulating and moving while we got a lot of load down on that back. So those are kind of my three, which is build that aerobic base. We start to mix in a little bit of some of that higher intensity stuff, which could be sprint based, which could be going through and doing like higher intensity circuits and things like that. We're going to build out some of that strength, lower body, a lot of lunging, a lot of step ups, angularly, directionally, those types of things, a little bit up, down, add in a little bit of sled work. And then let's make sure that we're sound with our core, so to speak, so that we've got kind of all of our systems covered. And then how far can we push that window out so that as we start to actually put on some miles, that we're built. I always say that our mission is we want to build more calluses and less blisters. And if you do things where you break down and you do too much too early and it's not something that you can handle, then injuries are going to pop up and you're going to see setbacks and all these other things. And our mission is to kind of like, we want to build some tolerance, some tissue tolerance over time, so that when you get out and do those things, that we've built up some resiliency to be able to handle that. And then the test is we get to Western Hunt Fest and find out what capacity can I operate at. We want it to be a learning tool for you so that, you know what, maybe you went out too hard, maybe you took too heavy a load and you're like, man, like that was a bad choice, or like I really shouldn't have crushed it so hard in that flat space. And then as soon as I got to an uphill, man, I was smoked, right? So there's kind of this load speed index that Jason and I have talked about a lot, which is you got to find kind of, you know, we don't want you to be the tortoise or the hare. We want you to be somewhere in the middle of that, where you learn to operate at a pace and at a level where you can continue maintaining that regardless of anything. And that is what's going to be like where the magic happens for you to be more successful at that. That's the best I can explain it.
Right.
That was great.
Is there any detriment to someone that just trains on a treadmill?
Detriment, I wouldn't say detriment. Like, I wouldn't say like, man, and by that, you mean in like just running, just uphill walking, putting a pack on as well?
Yeah. Is there, well, maybe I shouldn't have said detriment, but to me, it seems like you're pulling some of the mobility, right? That forward movement that you're doing out of that with the treadmill.
So my answer to that is, I would say it's not a detriment, but I wouldn't call it ideal. And I think that I've done a lot of work on the treadmill. I mean, Jason and I in our other facility, we used to have a pack there, and I would start by doing a little bit of that. But the reality of it is, if you're on a motorized treadmill, the treadmill is providing the power and not you. So all you have to do is keep your legs moving. And there's a big difference that when you compare getting out and actually onto flat ground or undulated ground or uneven ground to then you being the one that has to provide that power. So it's not a bad thing. Like, if that's all you have access to, then 100%. And you can move it up, move it down, change the level, all those types of things. That stuff's great. But you want to try and diversify that a little bit. You want to get out and actually get on the road. You want to get out and try and do a little bit uphill, downhill, where your balance especially is going to be affected at a much higher level. Because in that static environment, as you know, right, man, that pack shifts or whatever, and you're not really accounting for that. That's where, the back problem is going to pop up. That's where the hip, the knee, and all those other things are going to get exposed at a higher level, where if you're just walking straight and it's just like put one foot in front of the other and just kind of keep going, you're going to get the metabolic part of it, which is definitely beneficial. But I think you're going to miss out a little bit on what all those little other ancillary pieces of actually what you're going to need when you get out in the field is going to really require.
And okay, my last one, if I can remember it. So you see a lot of folks, right? You go out rucking, and I always see people in that forward lean, right? Especially when you start going up incline and when it gets, a little bit steep, right. But then you watch them even on flat ground, they have that forward lean. And I'm like, so as I've been rucking through our ruck out challenge, I've been very conscious about getting my hips pushed forward, right? And making sure that my shoulders are, over, and I'm in line.
Right.
You're stacked.
Yeah. Is that an issue? I mean, is that something that we're missing? Is that, or are we weak in the hips, or where's that coming from? Because I've seen a lot of that. And then, you watch the packout challenge, you'll see a lot of guys like, they're pretty much 90 degrees folded.
Yeah. Well, I think number one of the biggest issues, first and foremost, is just ergonomics of the pack, right? Is making sure that how you have that load situated is dispersing that load most effectively, right? And I think you guys talked about, like, Kafar was going to talk a little bit about pack fitting and some of those things at the event, which I think is hugely important. And we actually want that load to try and be a little bit more dispersed. We actually want a little bit of it to be slightly up higher. A lot of people feel like, they'll load their pack and they'll put all that weight clear down in the bottom, right? And then it really gets hip heavy, or they'll put too much of it like way up high. And then you see that really extreme kind of forward lean. And so we kind of want the best of, or the middle ground again there, right? It's kind of the Goldilocks thing. Like, we want to try and disperse that a little bit better, which is going to give you a little bit better posture, right? But you're going to have a little bit of a natural amount of flexion at the hip, right? So flexion at the hip, i.e. forward lean, based on the fact that we have to try and find a way to keep that load over our center of mass, where if I stand vertical straight up, right, that load is posterior to me, it's going to want to pull me backwards, right? So we have to have a slight amount of that, which as soon as I get to that position, really starts to increase the influence on our hip flexors and our low back, right? And so finding where I'm maybe not vertical, but just in a slight bit of flexion where I minimize how much that is based on having that load a little bit better, distributed over that pack is going to be the best opportunity, because not only will that lessen the amount of stress on the joints and the back and the hips and those types of things, but it's also going to free up your ability to actually walk. Because the more we're flexed forward, the more it shuts down the ability for us to actually move one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Yes. So it's going to shorten your gait. It's going to shorten your steps. And now you're going to be taking more steps to cover the same distance.
I do have one more. So with me paying attention to that, right? And maybe I'm not like, so straight up, but man, I have this hill behind the house, and that sucker is probably a good 40 degrees. And I was going up that, and dude, I got down, and my adductors, oh my God, I've never had a cramp so bad in a little, I looked
groin.
at that little tiny muscle. Holy heck, man. What, how do I remedy that? Because pickle juice don't work. Smoke me. Worst cramp I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, and I have
sartorius. Is that the one that you always cramp up on?
Yeah, I have a similar issue. So the eccentric, or the downward portion, right, where we have to stabilize that load coming downhill, creates such a higher amount of stress muscularly. And so one of the things that I try to tell people is that we have to account for more of that eccentric type work. And also it goes back to
explain what eccentric is for the non-lay person.
So that's the negative, or the downward portion, right? So think of a squat, right? The upward portion in a squat is concentric. The downward portion is eccentric, the lowering portion. Now, we actually have more strength in eccentric than we do in concentric. But as we go down and 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 doing some of that downhill work, the amount of stress that we have in that eccentric portion puts a lot of fatigue on the muscular system. And what happens is, so in your case, you're talking about our adductors, or what we call our groin kind of area, right? We have, there's 4 different adductor muscles. We have what's called our sartorius that kind of attaches from the inside of the knee and actually attaches to the outside of the hip. Those control a lot of where our knee is moving. And you'll see a lot of people as they're going downhill, their knee wants to collapse and fall down onto the inside, because our adductors are usually either super tight, super weak, as well as their lateral hip, or gluteus medius, which is kind of like, if you kind of feel on the side of our hip, right below where the old love handles are, those guys really control where our knee is going to stay more centered, right? So one of the things, again, we talk about in training that's absolutely critical is we have to get what I call get out of the hallway. And we're very kind of guilty a lot of times our training where everything's up and down, everything's forward and back, right? And all we do is we push here, we squat up and down, we deadlift up and down, right? We chest press here, we shoulder press here, and we don't train out here in what we call our frontal plane, which is everything left and right of us. So working on diversifying, especially your lunge patterns, your step up patterns and things like that, lateral lunge, angular lunge, like lunge at a 45, crossover lunge, crossover step up, lateral step up. Those things will start to target those adductors and groin muscles as well as those lateral hips a little bit better. And that's going to give us a lot better profile of stability as we get into doing some of that downhill work.
Yeah, see, it was interesting to me, right? But knowing that it's frontal plane, muscles, so to speak, but then to have such an effect on them, not going up the hill in that plane, right? It was just like, woo!
Yeah.
And man, it'll bring a tear to your eye, dude.
For
I'm not
sure.
saying I'm not saying I cried, but it was pretty close.
Yeah, no, it's something that, I mean, it's tough. The further you go, the harder you go, the longer you go. It's almost one of those things where it's not inevitable, but that's where you're going to see a lot of folks, start to struggle, have issues, start to see those types of things pop up. Happens to me I've got with some of my back pathology, my right leg hates me. And the further I go and the more fatigue my right leg gets, I get some of those similar symptoms. And some of it comes to hydration as well. That's a big part of it. The more we sweat a lot more up at altitude. If you watched our Mountain Fitness podcast, we talked a little bit about this stuff here last week. And so replacing sodium, replacing potassium, some of these things that are so critical with the amount that we actually sweat in those endeavors is going to help as well. So you have to stay on top of that too, because that's going to play into that fatigue piece as well as the hydration within the muscle. That's the best starting point.
And I will say that it was so bad that it made me recall Jason telling me that mountain elixir of tart cherry and CBD. So I told my wife, go get me some tart cherry and CBD, because this is ridiculous.
Yeah, it
will
work.
Wonders. Oh heck yeah! Well, it worked. Yeah. It worked the first year you told me about it, because I used it on the mountain, and you get awesome. Something like that and it kind of just falls off. And I was like, oh, it was enough pain to make me remember.
Yeah. We're gonna do a lot more of that stuff coming up. Kind of talking about those things, kind of our go-tos with some of those, just lifesavers, little simple.
Yeah, recovery is just as important as work. I think Joel had alluded to it earlier. This idea of constantly redlining while you're training, like feeling like if you're not redlining every day, then you're not getting better. And in reality, if you're redlining every day, you're constantly breaking down. Your body's never given a chance to catch up, in your training. So sometimes having an off day is a good thing, right? Or taking it easy is a good thing. You don't need to go into your training regimens and redline every single time you're in the gym. You don't need to get your heart rate into a red zone. You don't need to sweat buckets of sweat. You don't need to PR or max on all of your lifts. Sleep and nutrition and hydration, all of those things play into the overall performance.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, we have a good example of like just the data that we collect when we're out hunting and things like that. And I think after we had about a 12 or 13 hour day on the mountain with Jared from Hunt League. And
that was a long day.
And we did around 11, we did like 11 or 12 miles or something like that in that day. And we woke up the next day. And so we're checking our metrics on the phone, like, what our sleep quality was and all that other stuff. I think Jason said like he needed like 17 more hours of recovery based on what his data said.
Right.
And it was like, well, I guess that's out the window. You ready to go?
Yeah, it was like 25 degrees. I'm sleeping on the ground in my little old tent. Not getting the greatest night's sleep.
Yeah, so, if Jared ever sends you a pin and says, go hunt here, just delete the pin as soon as it comes through.
No, he did last year too, because I was going to try and go meet him. He's like, here's where I'm going, meet me here. And then maybe it was a blessing in disguise. Work kept grabbing a hold of me. I never got back out there, but he was like, man, I'm in the elk. Meet me up here. And I'm like, all right, dude, I'll be there in a minute. And then I found out where he was. I'm like,
he gave us that pin for that meadow. We ended up walking up like 1,000 vertical feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That dude sent me a pin.
It shouldn't take you very long. I'm like 2 hours later, we're huffing and puffing at the top.
Yeah.
He sent me a pin and he's like, it's a great area, man. It's only 15 miles in. I'm like, dude, I'm solo. What the hell am I going to do with a 15-mile pin, bro?
Yeah, that's
he's
Jared.
A madman. That guy can go.
Yeah, love it. So cool. Well, anything else you guys want to touch on before we kind of put a button on this? I mean, I know we're pumped. The clock's ticking, and it's gonna be February here next week, and hopefully people are starting to get registered,
2 days, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I thank you guys for being a part of it. We appreciate the heck out of what you bring to it, and love having you on the team. We did not talk about venues. So we have the NRA Whittington Center in Raton, New Mexico, Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, Colorado. We're at Cameo on the western slope just outside of Palisade. And then we are at Silver Arrow Bowman in Reno, Nevada. And then for the championship, if you will, we'll be back to the inaugural venue at American Bowman in Bailey. So you can jump on westernhuntfest.com, check our dates, get registered. Registration is open. hope to see everybody there.
And do we have a sellout number on any of these venues? We're going to have limited space. I know maybe at one or two
Bailey,
of them.
Bailey, we will have limited space. But Bailey is invite only for the packout challenge, the calling, and the shooting. We will have some shooter passes. I think we have it limited to I think it's around 60 that we're going to allow come shoot for fun and just be a part of the event. But everything else is wide open. So,
is the Bailey one on? Is that on ESPN? We can catch that streaming.
I hope.
that's coming up next.
Yeah, we can do play by play.
That's right.
Hey, we are playing with some ideas with some stuff with that, but we don't know. I don't want to promise anything.
Yeah. Cool. Well, if you guys get the opportunity, go to westernhuntfest.com, check out all those events. There's lots of them there, and they keep kind of spreading out, which means that it's covering more territory for you to find one closer to you. Get registered. It's going to be an awesome summer. There's so much there for everybody. Bring the kids, bring the wife, bring the whole family, and
bring your bow. That's really
bring your bow and your bugle tube, and probably a pack.
And bring Jeff a 9-volt battery so he can change his smoke detector.
Give me a couple.
So,
big ladder.
I'm bringing you a Costco pack.
Yeah. So, but well, we appreciate it, fellas. Always good to see you guys. We're looking forward to seeing you in person here pretty soon, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. See you next time.
Later, guys.